The Watchers and the Warned. The object fell silently through Earth's atmosphere, a perfect obsidian sphere no larger than a basketball. It didn't burn, didn't fragment, didn't behave like anything made by human hands. It landed with precision in the Atacama Desert, half buried in sand when Dr. Elena Rice found it 3 days later. Elena wasn't supposed to be there. The Chilean xenorchaeologist had defied university orders to abandon her dig site after funding was pulled. Something in the geological anomalies kept her searching, sleeping in her weathered tent while her colleagues returned to Santiago. 42 years old with salt and pepper hair always escaping her ponytail, Elena had built her career on intuition that others dismissed as obsession. Her scanner registered the object before she saw it, an electromagnetic pulse unlike anything in her database. When she unearthed it, the sphere's surface remained cool despite the desert's punishing heat. "What are you?" she whispered, her reflection distorted in its perfect blackness. The sphere responded, not with sound, but with light, projections that transformed the interior of her tent into a cosmic theater. Stars, planets, civilizations rendered in light so detailed she could see individual beings moving across alien landscapes. Then came the pattern. Rise, advancement, extinction. Over and over. Dozens of species, hundreds of worlds. Each ending the same way. Silver ships appearing above planets. A distinctive emblem of 3 interlinked circles branded into the final images before darkness fell. The sphere was an archive, a record, a warning. Elena's hands trembled as she activated her satellite phone. "General Okafor, it's Reyes. Remember that extinction theory I proposed? It's not a theory." Within 48 hours, Elena found herself in an underground facility beneath Geneva. The sphere locked in a containment chamber while scientists and military officials from 17 nations argued about jurisdiction. General Nya Okafor, head of the United Nations Space Defense Initiative, silenced the room with a single raised hand. "Dr. Reyes didn't find this object," Okafor said, her Nigerian accent clipped with urgency. "It found us, and we're not the first." Elena projected her findings. Translations of symbols embedded in the archive's light code. These aren't just recordings. They're messages from the dead. Each civilization discovered this archive shortly before they were harvested. Each tried to warn the next. Harvested. The Chinese delegate's expression remained neutral, but his knuckles whitened. "The sphere contains partial data on the harvesters themselves," Elena continued. "They call themselves the Mrothan. They don't conquer for territory or resources. They cultivate intelligence across the galaxy, then harvest it at peak development. Like farmers culling crops," murmured the Russian representative. "Precisely. And according to these calculations," Elena's voice faltered, "we've reached harvest stage." 3 days later, the first signal came, a pulse that disabled every satellite orbiting Earth simultaneously. Then the ships appeared, exactly as the archive had shown. Massive silver vessels, beautiful in their geometric precision, bearing the 3-circle emblem. They positioned themselves above major population centers, but made no communication attempts. Humanity responded as expected, with panic, with prayers, with nuclear missiles that disintegrated before reaching the ships. The Mrothan responded with surgical precision. Shanghai disappeared first, not destroyed, but emptied. 8 million people simply gone between one satellite pass and the next. Buildings remained intact, vehicles abandoned mid-street, pets still in apartments. When Moscow followed 12 hours later, the pattern became clear. The Mrothan weren't conquering Earth. They were collecting it. In the chaos, Elena returned to the Atacama with the sphere, accompanied by a small team including General Okafor and Dr. Sanjay Kumar, a quantum physicist whose theories on interspatial communication had been dismissed as fantasy until the sphere confirmed them. "There's something we missed," Elena insisted, setting up equipment in her old dig site. "The archive isn't just observation, it's interaction." These civilizations communicated with each other across time. Kumar adjusted his glasses, skeptical. Even if that were possible. It's not just possible. It's happening. Elena interrupted. The sphere didn't land randomly. It landed here because something is buried underneath. The excavation took 18 hours, even with military-grade equipment. What they uncovered defied explanation. A chamber of unknown metal, clearly artificial, inscribed with the same symbols found in the sphere's projections. Carbon dating proved impossible. The material rejected all standard testing methods. It's older than the geological layer, Elena said, wonder in her voice. This was here before modern humans evolved. Inside the chamber lay a single artifact, a crystalline device resembling a double helix, but with impossible geometries that hurt the eyes if observed too long. When Elena brought the sphere near it, both objects resonated, filling the chamber with harmonics that made Kumar's instruments spark and fail. It's a key, Elena realized, watching new projections form around them. Not to warn us, to arm us. The projections showed a species not included in the Archive's extinction records. Tall, luminous beings who moved like liquid light. The Vexari, according to the translated symbols. They had faced the Mrathan, and neither won nor lost but stepped sideways. Outside the cycle. They found a way to exist between spaces, Elena explained, as the team rushed the artifacts to a makeshift base when reports came in that Santiago had gone silent. The Mrathan harvest in physical space, but the Vexari discovered something beyond dimension. You're suggesting we what? Transcend physical reality? Okafor asked. I'm suggesting we fight back in ways they don't expect. Elena replied. The Vexari left weapons, not bombs or ships, but tools for perception. The Mrathan aren't invincible, they're just operating on a level we haven't accessed. Over the next 2 weeks, as city after city went silent across the globe, a resistance formed. They called themselves Stardust, a reference to human origin and destiny among the stars. Operating from hidden locations worldwide, they used the Vexari technology Elena's team had begun to decode. The first breakthrough came in Rio de Janeiro. A Mrathan collection ship hovered above the city, its harvesting beam ready to sweep through streets and buildings. Dr. Kumar, leading a team equipped with devices reverse-engineered from the Vexari crystal, activated a network of transmitters. The beam distorted, fractured, and for a moment, flickered to reveal what lay beyond. A glimpse of the collected, held in stasis between dimensions. The Mrathan ship recoiled, adjusting its approach. For the first time, the harvesters hesitated. They didn't expect resistance, Okafor said during an emergency broadcast. No other species had access to Vexari technology. We've surprised them. But surprise wasn't enough. The Mrathan adapted quickly, changing their harvest patterns, targeting Stardust bases. Elena knew they needed more than defensive measures. The key came from the sphere itself. As Elena studied it in a bunker beneath the ends, it revealed its final secret. It wasn't just a message from past victims. It was a trap for the harvesters, designed by the Vexari and seeded throughout the galaxy. Each sphere absorbed data from fallen civilizations, grew stronger, waited for the species that would finally use it as more than a warning. We're not just fighting for Earth, Elena told the assembled resistance leaders. We're fighting to end the cycle. The Vexari couldn't defeat the Mrathan directly, so they created a long game, empowering future species with collective knowledge until one could stand against the harvesters. Stardust launched Operation Breaklight, a coordinated global effort using modified Vexari technology to create dimensional fractures near Mrathan ships. The strategy wasn't to destroy them but to expose them, to drag what existed between spaces into physical reality where it could be confronted. The first attempt in Johannesburg failed catastrophically, the feedback destroying the transmitter network and everyone operating it. The second, in Sydney, produced a momentary rift but closed before it could be stabilized. The third, led by Elena herself in what remained of London, succeeded. The rift tore through reality like lightning through fog. The Mrothan ship didn't explode. It unfolded, revealing its true nature. Not mechanical but biomechanical, a living vessel piloted by beings who resembled illuminated skeletons wrapped in metallic skin. Through the rift came something else. The harvested. Millions of humans suspended in a state beyond time. Consciousness preserved, but bodies transformed into energy the Mrothan could feed upon eternally. Now, Elena shouted into her communicator as Kumar activated the crystal device they'd modified into a beacon. The rift stabilized, widened. The harvested began to awaken from their suspension, awareness returning. The Mrothan ship convulsed as its collection destabilized, energy patterns disrupting. General Okafor led the military response, not with conventional weapons, but with focused electromagnetic pulses calibrated to the frequencies the sphere had revealed as harmful to Mrothan biology. The ship's outer shell cracked, leaking silver fluid that evaporated upon touching Earth's atmosphere. For the first time in their long history of harvesting, the Mrothan sent a communication, not in words, but in sensations that translated to concepts. Surprise, concern, reassessment. They're calling for reinforcements, Kumar said, monitoring the transmission. Elena shook her head, studying the projections now flowing freely from both sphere and crystal. No, they're calling for guidance. We're not in their archive. They don't have protocols for this scenario. The London Rift became the turning point. As news spread of the first successful countermeasure, resistance cells worldwide implemented Elena's techniques. Each success freed more harvested consciousness, weakened more Mrothan ships. Some returned to orbit, regrouping. Others attempted new harvesting methods that Stardust quickly adapted to counter. A month into what media now called the Harvest War, Elena made her most important discovery. The Vexari hadn't just left technology. They'd left themselves, consciousness preserved in crystalline structures buried at key points around the planet. They had seeded Earth long ago, recognizing its potential, waiting for the inevitable confrontation. They weren't extinct, Elena explained during a global broadcast from Stardust's new headquarters in the reclaimed London zone. They transformed, becoming guides rather than direct actors. The Mrothan have harvested countless species, but never understood the true nature of consciousness, that it can exist beyond physical form, that it can persist and evolve. As she spoke, displays worldwide showed Mrothan ships retreating from Earth's atmosphere, silver shapes diminishing against the blackness of space, not fleeing in defeat but withdrawing in confusion, confronted with a scenario their trillion-year pattern had never prepared them for. Humanity had become the breaking point in the cycle, not because they were stronger or more advanced than previous harvested species, but because they had inherited the collective wisdom of the fallen and the transcended alike. The sphere, now permanently linked with the Vexari crystal, projected a new archive, not of extinction, but of possibility. The future remained unwritten. The harvesters would return, adapted and prepared, but humanity would not face them alone. Elena looked up from the projection, her eyes meeting Okafor's across the command center. "We've earned ourselves time," she said. "Now we need to use it wisely." The general nodded. "We have work to do." As night fell over a changed Earth, the stars seemed brighter somehow, watching, as they always had, but no longer witnessing an inevitable end. The cycle had cracked. What would emerge remained to be seen. The breaking point. 6 months after the Mrothan retreat, humanity lived in a state of uneasy vigilance. Major cities had been reclaimed, the harvested slowly reintegrated into society. The world had united under the Stardust Protocol, a framework of cooperation that transcended old national boundaries. The common threat had accomplished what centuries of diplomacy couldn't. Elena Reyes now directed the Vexari Implementation Division from a complex built around the original Atacama chamber. Scientists and engineers from every nation worked to understand and adapt the crystalline technology. Progress came in bursts and setbacks. The alien concepts often defied human language and mathematics. "We're thinking too linearly," Elena told her team during a particularly frustrating session. The Vexari didn't just build devices. They'd reimagined reality. Dr. Kumar, now her deputy, rubbed his temples. Perhaps we need to stop trying to translate their technology into ours and instead adapt our understanding to theirs. The breakthrough came not from the scientists, but from the recovered, those who had been briefly harvested before Stardust's interventions freed them. Many returned change, with fragmentary memories of the space between dimensions where the Mrothan had suspended them. Some demonstrated new cognitive abilities, pattern recognition beyond human baseline, perception of electromagnetic fields, intuitive understanding of quantum states. Asha Okafor, the general's 19-year-old daughter who had been harvested in Lagos and recovered in the Moscow liberation, became the key interpreter. Her mind, altered by 3 weeks in Mrothan suspension, could perceive the Vexeri systems as systems rather than objects. "They're not tools," she explained, her hands moving through holographic displays as if sculpting water. "They're extensions of consciousness. The crystals don't power devices. They amplify intention." Under Asha's guidance, the Vexeri technology yielded its secrets. Earth's defensive capabilities grew exponentially. Early warning systems extended beyond the solar system. The first human ships incorporating crystalline navigation launched, able to slip partially between dimensions, not true faster-than-light travel, but something more elegant, moving through folds in space-time. But Elena knew defense wasn't enough. The Archive sphere continued receiving transmissions, echoes from distant worlds showing Mrothan harvest operations continuing across the galaxy. The harvesters hadn't abandoned their purpose. They had merely postponed Earth's collection while reassessing. "We need to take the fight to them," General Okafor argued during the Global Security Council meeting. "Strike their staging areas before they return in force." "With what?" The European representative's voice was skeptical. "We've barely mastered interplanetary travel with Vexeri tech. The Mrothan operate across thousands of light years." Elena stepped forward. "We don't need to reach them physically. The sphere and crystal network form a dimensional antenna. The Vexeri left us more than defensive measures. They left us a way to disrupt the Mrothan across space itself." The plan was audacious. Use the growing crystal network to create a controlled dimensional cascade, targeting the unique frequency signature of Mrothan bioships. Not to destroy them, which would require energy Earth couldn't generate, but to disrupt their harvesting capabilities, reveal them to their intended victims, break the cycle of silent collection. "We'll be exposing ourselves," Kumar warned. "The moment we activate a cascade this powerful, we become the primary target." "We already are," Elena replied. "But we won't be alone." Over the next 3 months, Operation Lightbreak took shape. Crystal arrays were positioned at key geomagnetic nodes around the planet. The recovered provided crucial insights into Mrothan vulnerabilities. Harvest ships required absolute dimensional stability to maintain their collections. Disrupting that stability would not only prevent new harvests but potentially release those already collected. As preparations entered their final phase, the first warning came: a distortion in the asteroid belt, signatures matching Mrothan approach vectors from the Archive. They were returning, and in greater numbers. "They've adapted," Asha said, studying the readings. "These ships are shielded differently. They've analyzed our previous countermeasures." Elena felt cold certainty settle in her stomach. "Move up the timetable. We launch Lightbreak in 48 hours. The Mrothan didn't wait. 27 ships emerged from dimensional folds near Earth's moon, larger than those of the first harvest attempt. They didn't immediately approach Earth but established positions in a geometric pattern that the Archive identified as a containment formation. "They're not here to harvest," Elena realized. "They're here to quarantine, to contain what they now see as an infection in their perfect system." The first attack came not against cities, but against Stardust facilities, precision strikes that somehow bypassed early warning systems. The Jakarta array was destroyed with all personnel. Cairo followed hours later. The Mrothan had evolved their approach from collection to elimination. General Okafor activated Earth's defensive grid, a network of Vexeri-enhanced satellites that created dimensional bubbles around key locations. The Mrothan weapons distorted against these shields but didn't penetrate. Stalemate. In the Atacama complex, Alina and Asha worked feverishly to recalibrate Lightbreak for the new Mrothan configuration. The young woman's altered perception proved invaluable, seeing patterns in the crystalline structure invisible to instruments. "There," Asha said, her fingers dancing through the holographic interface. "Their new shields have a fluctuation cycle, if we time the cascade to match the harmonic." Kumar burst into the lab, face ashen. They'd broken through at Kyoto. New weapon configuration, some kind of dimensional inversion. The entire city is, he struggled for words. It's being unmade, not destroyed, erased from reality itself. Satellite footage confirmed the horror, a spreading void where Kyoto had stood, not rubble or ash, but absence, as if that portion of Japan had never existed. The Mrothan had escalated beyond harvesting to something worse, selective elimination of space-time. "They're afraid," Alina said, the realization dawning. "This isn't punishment, it's fear response. We've become the first species to threaten their cycle, and they're responding with everything they have." General Okafor's voice came through the emergency channel. "All Lightbreak sites, prepare for immediate activation. We can't wait for optimal conditions." The countdown began, 30 minutes to global synchronization of the crystal arrays. 28 minutes when 3 more Mrothan ships appeared in low orbit. 25 minutes when dimensional inversions began forming over Sydney, Cairo, and Rio de Janeiro. In the Atacama complex, Alina made a decision. The archive sphere had one function they hadn't utilized: direct communication with other spheres across the galaxy. The Vexeri had created a network, but humanity had only accessed their local node. "We need to call for help," she told Kumar. "From whom?" "Every advanced civilization in range has been harvested." "Not every civilization," Alina countered. "The archive shows gaps, species the Mrothan bypassed or lost track of. And the recovered who've been studying the sphere have found coordinates, communication protocols." Kumar looked doubtful. "Even if such civilizations exist, they've hidden from the Mrothan for millennia. Why would they risk exposure for us?" "Because we're not asking them to fight," Alina said, fingers flying over the crystal interface. "We're showing them how to end the cycle." As the Lightbreak countdown passed 15 minutes, Alina activated the sphere's deepest protocols. The crystalline structure vibrated, emitting harmonics that made the air itself seem to thicken. The sphere's surface shifted, patterns flowing across the obsidian blackness like liquid mathematics. 10 minutes. Sydney disappeared from monitoring screens. General Okafor reported that Moscow's shields were failing. 5 minutes. The sphere pulsed with increasing intensity, projecting symbols no human had seen before, responses from distant nodes, ancient protocols awakening. 1 minute. Alina locked eyes with Asha. "Whatever happens," she said, "remember that we chose to fight rather than submit. That matters." The young woman nodded, her altered eyes reflecting the crystal's light. "They'll remember us." 0. Lightbreak activated. Every crystal array on Earth pulsed simultaneously, creating a dimensional cascade that rippled outward, not in physical space, but through the layers of reality the Mrothan navigated. Their ships distorted, geometries failing as their carefully maintained dimensional stability collapsed. But the Mrothan responded immediately. Their weapons recalibrated, firing dimensional inversions directly at the crystal arrays. 3 arrays vanished instantly. The cascade weakened, stabilized, then began to fail. "It's not enough," Kumar said, watching the readings plummet. "Their adaptation rate exceeds our projections." That's when the sphere changed. Its surface shifted from black to luminous silver, then to a color human eyes couldn't properly process. It rose from its containment field, suspended in midair. Alina felt rather than heard its call, a summoning that transcended physical space. The response came not as ships or weapons, but as presence. Throughout the solar system, points of light blossomed, not emerging from hyperspace or dimensional folds, but simply becoming, as if they had always been there but chosen not to be perceived. The forgotten. Species who had hidden from the Mrathan cycle, who had learned the Vexari ways of existence between perception and reality. They hadn't come in ships, but in consciousness, answering the sphere's activation of protocols established eons ago. Their presence manifested as light, pinpoint beams that intersected with the failing light break cascade, reinforcing it, restructuring it. The Mrathan ships convulsed as dimensional inversions reflected back upon themselves, their perfect geometric formation distorted. For the first time in recorded history, the Mrathan communicated directly, a transmission received simultaneously by every communication device on Earth. CYTLE disruption beyond parameteors. Harvest suspended he and Diang reassessment. Elena stepped forward in the Atacama complex, addressing the sphere, and through it, both humanity's attackers and unexpected allies. There will be no more harvests. The cycle ends now. We've awakened the network the Vexari built, civilizations that escaped your pattern, technologies you never detected. We don't want destruction. We want recognition. The response came not in words but in sensations, confusion, assessment, calculation. The Mrathan existed in certainty. Their trillion-year history had never included failure or negotiation. They harvested or they didn't. There was no middle ground in their understanding. But now they faced something unprecedented. A united front of species visible and hidden, technical and transcendent. The light break cascade, amplified by the forgotten, had revealed the Mrathan to every world in their harvest coup. Their perfect secrecy, the core of their harvesting strategy, had been irrevocably broken. Slowly, the dimensional inversions receded. Void stabilized, not healing, but at least not expanding. The Mrathan ships resumed perfect geometric formation, then began a synchronized retreat. Not in fear or defeat, but in recalibration. The cycle had encountered an exception. Their trillion-year pattern required adjustment. As the ships vanished into dimensional folds, the presence of the forgotten lingered, points of light that gradually resolved into translucent forms observing Earth from orbit. Not humanoid, but not entirely alien either. Shapes that suggested the evolutionary convergence of consciousness across the galaxy. Through the sphere, they communicated not with words but with concepts. Acknowledgement, connection, continuation. Elena understood. Earth had not just defended itself. It had joined something older and larger than humanity had imagined. The Vexari had not merely left tools. They had left an invitation to a hidden community of consciousness that existed alongside the visible galaxy. What happens now? General Okafor asked, her voice crackling through the communication system as reports of the Mrathan retreat flooded in. Elena watched the sphere slowly return to its obsidian state, but different now. Flecks of silver permanently embedded in its surface like stars in night sky. Now we rebuild. We learn. We prepare. The Mrathan will return eventually, but not as harvesters, as negotiators. We've changed the relationship. In the months that followed, Earth began a transformation. The recovered, led by Asha, formed a new branch of humanity, altered perception leading to altered capability. The forgotten maintained their distance but shared knowledge through the sphere network. Not technologies but concepts, ways of seeing reality that would have been incomprehensible before the Harvest War. 1 year after Lightbreak, Elena stood at the edge of the Atacama dig site, now expanded into a vast complex of research facilities and diplomatic outposts. The first delegations from hidden worlds would arrive soon, not in physical form but in consciousness, using crystalline avatars to interact with humanity. Kumar joined her, looking up at the stars now filled with new meaning. "Do you think the Mrathan truly understand what's happened?" he asked. Elena considered the question. They understand disruption. They understand adaptation. Whether they can understand cooperation remains to be seen. But they're learning what we've known all along. What's that? That consciousness isn't something to be harvested, Elena said. It's something that grows stronger when connected. The cycle didn't just break, it transformed. Above them, the night sky seemed deeper somehow, stars not just distant suns but doorways to civilizations no longer hiding. The galaxy had watched countless species die under the Mrothan harvest. Now it would watch something new emerge, a network of consciousness that even the oldest cycle couldn't contain. Humanity had not merely survived. They had shattered the cycle and rewritten the rules of a game older than their world. And somewhere in the vast darkness between stars, the Mrothan were calculating their response to a question they had never before needed to ask. What happens when the harvest refuses to be collected? The answer was still unfolding, written across a galaxy awakening from ancient patterns into new possibility. Whatever came next, humanity would not face it alone.